All right, we are live. Hi there, Amy here. Today I am hopping on live to talk about how to make better decisions under pressure. All right, so let's dive in. Have you ever noticed yourself continuing to move forward on an important decision that even though internally something inside is telling you this doesn't quite make sense? Maybe you haven't fully fleshed out exactly why, but you're just moving forward anyway. And I think that we do this a lot in life, in our professional life, and it's not because we don't care about the decision, the action. It's not because we're avoiding taking responsibility, but I think it's because we're under pressure, especially as a leader. You're under pressure a lot of the time, being pulled in multiple different directions, and taking a moment to pause and try to flesh out what's really going on can feel like a harder thing to do than just continuing to push through. And so that's what I want to talk about today. And I want to talk about stress and burnout, and why increased stress and burnout can often show up before leaders realize exactly what's happening. And the good news is there are early signs, there are early signals that are easy to miss, but if we can slow down just enough and learn to better pay attention to those signals, especially for high functioning leaders, then we can avoid stress becoming too much where it gets to the point of burnout. So we're going to talk about that today. And then I'm also going to leave you with 3 very practical, very simple actions that you can start using today to help lead more effectively, because this video is about self-leadership, which is so important, whether you are leading a team or leading your own life. And the better we can lead ourselves, of course, the better we can show up for others. So I feel like this is a good topic for leaders, so that you can, with these practical action steps that I'll share with you at the end of the video today, then you can hopefully adopt those and continue showing up as the great leader you are for your team. And self-leadership is also important, because how you lead yourself is going to shape how you're able to lead and show up for others. And the conversation today is just about noticing what's happening earlier, picking up on those signals earlier, so that we can save time and save stress later. It's not about fixing anything or beating ourselves up if we've gotten to the point of burnout. It's just about noticing earlier. So take a deep breath, take some pressure off, and let's dive in here. Because what happens when we pay attention to the internal signals as they're starting to show up before overwhelm, well, then we can avoid the challenging aftermath of, sometimes I've seen disengagement, burnout, and then that's going to make things much harder than fixing, or I don't want to use the word fixing, than if you were to start to notice and pay attention to these signals and give what is trying to get your attention, rather than pushing through. Because when you get to the point of burnout, when the stress becomes too much, then of course it's more challenging to recover. And I think that if you are a leader, or if you're in a high pressure role, maybe a sales role, for example, where you're expected to perform, your performance is tied to a quota, you might be the type of personality type that thrives under pressure. I know that I am, and that's not a bad thing. But what happens when we handle pressure extremely well, this could be part of the reason why we sometimes miss the signals that are trying to get our attention, because we're not noticing them, because we're used to pressure, and we thrive under pressure, and we're pushing through. So a question to ask yourself is to think about, what might you be continuing to, or where might you be continuing to make these high stakes decisions, even when something doesn't quite make sense. So you don't have enough of the information that you need, but you're making the decision anyway. Maybe it's expected of you to produce, to move forward, tight timeline in your leadership day to day. So where might you be continuing to make some of these high stakes decisions when something inside feels a bit unclear? Because when we repeatedly move forward without understanding what's behind our decisions, without having, when something doesn't make sense to us and we're just going along with it, um, you can start to lose trust in your own judgment. And in organizational psychology, this is often referred to as cognitive dissonance. It's when you're taking action, you're acting in a way that doesn't fully align with how you feel internally. Like, think about if you're hanging out with a group of people and what they're talking about, their goals, what excites them, the topics of interest for them. You're going along with it, pretending like you're interested, because that's easier than maybe walking away or speaking up and saying what's true to you. That's just a lighter kind of example to help put it into context. But in a bigger context, maybe a more riskier context, is when we're moving forward with initiatives that we don't fully understand at work. This can become exhausting when we do it enough over time. Then it leads to this feeling of disconnect, and that can become exhausting and ultimately lead to burnout. So I talk about stress a lot, and how to ease stress in the hiring process, and in the workplace. But let's talk about stress versus burnout. So stress is not a bad thing. A lot of times we can tend to thrive in stressful environments. But what is stress? It's typically situational, temporary, often tied to maybe a deadline. And so it's short-term pressure that can be resolved once we complete the project, or once we get the support that we need, or maybe give ourselves the rest that we need. But burnout is stress that hasn't been addressed, and it builds gradually over time. And it can show up as exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, mental distancing, where we kind of shut down and pull away and stop expressing our thoughts, our giving our input. And it can reduce our confidence in decision making. So burnout isn't sudden. It's stress plus avoiding figuring out what's really going on, and then doing that consistently over time. And so I don't think that burnout comes from working hard. I think it more often comes from, okay, being pulled in multiple different directions and then making these high stakes decisions without fully understanding what's behind them. And then repeatedly overriding the hesitation, ignoring those signals. Okay, I have a pause here, I have a hesitation, I have a concern, but I'm just going to push past that and keep moving forward because I'm expected to move forward. I'm expected to produce. And if we're used to that, then we may be have a pattern of not slowing down enough to focus on the signals that are actually showing up. And so this is where that self-leadership can start to break down, because when we're not paying attention to how we're really feeling and giving attention to what's trying to get our attention, well, we're actually going against ourselves. So then you can't really be leading yourself in a way that is in alignment with how you really feel. And so what are some of these early signals that leaders might be missing? Decision fatigue is one that comes up, where you feel mentally and emotionally exhausted after making too many complex, high stakes decisions in a row. And so over time, we can start to take shortcuts, or we can start to second guess the decisions that you're making. Avoidance or freezing up, where we maybe don't make a decision, delay the decision, maybe cancel a meeting because there's just the overwhelm has gotten to be too much, and maybe you're feeling a little bit stuck. It's not because you don't care, it's because your system gets overloaded and needs some relief. And another signal would be maybe you start to question your judgment, maybe in areas where you typically feel decisive. So this happens when we get too far outside of ourselves, too far out of alignment, because we're skipping over those signals and sort of going against ourselves. So naturally, if you're not trusting yourself, then eventually you're going to have your confidence in your judgment is going to continue to decrease. And these signals can often show up as in the workplace as, okay, I'm just going to do what's required, but I'm not going to go above and beyond. I'll manage expectations. The situation is what it is. And this is not apathy, but it's more a form of self-protection where the emotional investment maybe doesn't feel met. It feels too costly. So I'm still going to function. I'm still going to show up, but I'm just going to invest a little bit less because it doesn't feel like my input matters necessarily. And so um, it'll start to feel it can start to feel like you're functioning, but you're depleted, so maybe from the outside, you're moving forward, you're pressing forward, you're putting forth the effort, but how sustainable is it really long term when you've made too many decisions where you've got questions that are not underneath, that aren't getting addressed. And these are not weaknesses. These are just signals that are asking for your attention. That's why I think it's really powerful to often stop and ask yourself, okay, what is really bugging me? Focus on what is getting your attention, even if it's frustrating you, rather than reaching for something to feel better in the moment, because that challenge is still going to be there. It's trying to get your attention for a reason. So why do high functioning, strong leaders sometimes miss these signals? Well, maybe by default, as a leader, you have a high tolerance for pressure. You thrive in environments where there is high pressure. It's probably part of the reason that you were drawn to the role that you're in. And also, if you're a leader and or in sales, you might be you're rewarded for output and for competence. This is something that definitely rings true for me. And, I started at a young age, giving myself projects and holding myself accountable, and giving myself my own deadlines because it made me feel good. I learned the importance of self-trust and looking within and setting my own goals and working toward my goals. And that is something that felt good to me when maybe that external validation wasn't always there. And so this can be a positive habit or practice, tying your just being focused on competence and output. But when our identity is tied to what we're producing, then wait a minute, where is my value? Where am I feeling my value for myself? So this is just kind of a personal side note. This is something I've been working on for years now, and then there's always more to work on. But I've just even noticed it more, learned and to overcome this potential challenge even more recently, because there's nothing wrong with output, with being capable, but when we're just moving, we may not be, it can be easy to miss those signals that are trying to get your attention. And when you give attention to what's getting your attention, you're going to have more mental clarity and be able to make decisions that are coming from a place that feels aligned. And then so they're going to be clear, sharper thinking, clearer decisions. And then so the output's going to be even stronger. But we can have, as a leader, a bias toward action, where you're rewarded for output over reflection. And there's so much power in self-reflection. So maybe, you had an undesirable outcome, but you're rewarded for action. So you keep pushing through rather than stop and pause and take the time for reflection. But when you do that, that time is going to later save you time. When you slow down to heed that pause and reflect on, okay, what happened here? What were my actions? What was their result? How am I feeling about it now? Okay, well, what can I do differently next time? But if you're a high functioning leader, you may not be paying attention to that signal because, again, you're rewarded for output and for taking action. And similarly, your role rewards endurance. Keep going, keep pushing, work harder, work longer, maybe more so than working to find that deeper understanding. Okay, so then why does this matter? Why are we talking about it? What are some of the real costs of ignoring these signals? Well, it can lead to delayed or avoided decisions, maybe a rushed or misaligned hiring process or hiring choices. I've seen this a lot. Quiet disengagement. We just start to maybe not speak up because we are, you've gotten used to ignoring the signals, and then you get the burnout, the mental exhaustion. Well, I'm just going to quietly disengage. Also, another cost of ignoring signals could be these signals could be increased turnover. Of course, this is something that I see a lot as well, where leaders are ignoring the signs that they're seeing in the hiring process, in the build out, in the launch, in the backfill. There was a sign there, but we got to push through. We've got a tight timeline. So that's another example. And of course, all of these challenges can impact your team as well. Losing focus, losing momentum, kind of feeling a lack in direction. And so stress becomes costly when too much time passes, where we don't stop to pay closer attention to what isn't working. And just some real world examples that I've seen. Freezing up or becoming, well, I call it the frozen leader. High pressure hiring timelines, and a process that doesn't really feel like it's set up for success, but rather than question it, we keep pushing. Well, eventually it becomes too much, and sometimes leaders will just kind of freeze up. And the avoidant leader, when the decisions don't make sense, but the momentum continues anyway. The stress can become too much, where over time they might just withdraw, maybe take a vacation during a high stakes time, or a mental vacation that's not a real vacation, but they stop showing up just for a brief period because you need some relief. And then another real world example I've seen is the failed launch, where you've got fast moving initiatives, but without the alignment. So leaders are not aligned on the front end. And then you've got, so the support isn't there. The pacing doesn't necessarily make sense. This results in a tremendous amount of pressure, and it impacts the communication. Maybe there's a lack of communication across the leadership team, and this impacts the decisions and, of course, the outcomes. And again, the patterns are it's not about a lack of effort, but it's about a lack of alignment and how that can impact how you feel over time, how you show up over time. All right, so these are some of the real world examples. Now let's talk about what can you do, some practical action steps that you can start implementing today. Very simple, very practical, maybe not necessarily easy, but they'll get easier over time. The first one is my favorite, and become a challenger. If you're a leader, if you're in sales, you likely are a challenger, but become a challenger in areas where maybe you haven't been challenging. So I like this one because I've been a challenger since I was little. If something doesn't make sense, I'm asking more questions. And actually, I think a lot of us, we all were challengers as kids. Kids have a lot of what I like to call healthy success habits, including asking why, that we can tend to get away from, at least in certain situations in our adult lives. But when something doesn't make sense, don't move forward. Ask questions until something makes sense. So challenge forward motion until it makes sense to you. So don't move forward without a deeper understanding. Ask questions until you genuinely understand, because when we're confused and then we move forward, that's going to create stress later. Think about an individual contributor or maybe you've had a time where you were given a directive and you didn't really understand the deliverable that was being asked, but rather than challenge, you get started. And then so maybe you go in the wrong direction and produce a deliverable that is not what the leader wanted. I've seen this happen. And it results in a lot of wasted time. It's, misaligned effort. So when something doesn't make sense, challenge it. And this is also something that has helped me to produce strong retention rates as a recruiter, and has helped me in working with leaders and also working with candidates. Because if the way the leader is sharing the details of the role, if something is unclear, or if the why behind the candidate profile isn't making sense, I know that I'm going to have a challenge as a recruiter in my search. And if I'm speaking with a candidate and I'm not getting the answers, the information that I need, well, I know that the leader is going to have more questions. So that means I have a question. So I'm not so good with gray areas. I need a deeper understanding. And this helps. It's not always a popular way to do things. It's not always well received, but it helps me move forward with clarity and have a sharper decision making, and it make decisions for coming from a sharper, clearer mind. And then the results are going to be better. So be a challenger, challenge conversations, directives, initiatives when they're not making sense. Number two, create daily space to rebuild self-trust. Yes, I am talking about meditation. And if you've got a lot going on and you feel like you don't have time to sit for 15 minutes and connect with yourself at the start of your day, instead focus on what you can do. Do you have 3 minutes? Do you have 5 minutes? And we're all familiar with the concept of completing something at the start of the day, like making your bed, for example, because then you're more likely to carry through. Okay, good job. I completed a task. What's the next thing? Well, it's the same concept with taking time to sit with yourself, do some breathing, and focus on pay attention, notice what comes up. And when you're able to do this, take some space for yourself to sit, breathe, see what feelings come up, see what thoughts come up, and pay them some attention. Well, then you're more likely to notice the signals under high stress situations as you move throughout your day. But instead, if you skip over this at the start of your day and jump right into a busy day, you can see how it would be easier to miss those signals. And I started meditating at the start of COVID, and I've been doing it every single day. I don't think I've missed a day. Maybe there was a day, on occasion, there's a day where I have to leave the house for something and I didn't do my breathing and my meditation. Well, then I'll find time I'll take a moment during my commute. I'll find time later in the day. So focus on what you can do, not what you can do. And the intent, the purpose is, if you start your day with that mental clarity, then you'll carry that forward during the times of the day where you're feeling stress. And you can start to pick up on these signals and rebuild that self-trust. So this is so important. And the benefits that I've gotten from meditation have just compounded. So I'll start my day now, and maybe it's just 15 minutes still. But from that time going inward, afterwards, I'll just be flooded with ideas. Ideas for leadership coaching, ideas for content, ideas for ways to move my business forward. And I'll jot them all down, and then I'm ready to take action when I'm ready to sit and come back and take action. So just wanted to share that, because once you start meditation, if it's something that seems a little bit daunting to you, it gets easier, and the results absolutely compound over time. And then the third simple, practical takeaway that I encourage you to do is to practice clear, direct communication, effective communication, meaning say what you mean. You might be familiar with the book, The Four Agreements, and that's one of the agreements that the book talks about. Just by having the courage to say what you actually mean, can minimize so much unnecessary discomfort. So the book is talking about it in that way. And then as a leader, think about, okay, so as humans, we understand what we have and what we're trying to say. And we often think that the other person understands what we mean. But that's not always the case, because we're all coming to the situation with different experiences that shape our perspective. So make sure take extra caution and care to say what you mean, and to clarify when something feels unclear. All right, so wrapping up, ask yourself where you might be overriding, not paying attention to, ignoring an internal signal. Things seem fine on the surface, but wait a minute, underneath there's something that's kind of a sticking point. So consider where that might be for you. And then I invite you to take action on the 3 simple action steps that I just shared. So recapping, challenge one conversation or unclear decision this week. And then start with just a few minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, do what you can of stillness at the start of the day. And then also pay attention to whether you are saying what it is you actually mean. That's going to save time and improve performance and help the work get done faster. And so if you're experiencing burnout or high stress, it's not a personal failure. And just by paying attention earlier, that's leadership, and you can better lead yourself better. So thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, of course, I invite you to like and subscribe. And if you are experiencing a leadership challenge or an area that's creating stress or friction, and you would like to reach out, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk it through. All right, that's it for this one, and we'll see you in the next one.